we're putting the spotlight on the issue of rising sea levels. And to help us with that issue, we've got Dr. Cassandra Nanlal. She is a physical oceanographer at the IMA. We also have from the IMA GIS officer Hamish Asmath. Good morning to both of you. Happy Mother Earth Day.
Good morning. Same to you.
Morning. Same to you.
There's a report from the UN Environmental Program called Making Peace with Nature. And the UN Secretary General says we've been waging war on nature. And many would argue that nature is beginning to wage war back on us, as evidenced by, the rising sea levels, the land degradation that we're seeing, and so on and so forth. Let's look at the rising sea levels issue very quickly. How serious is it for us as a small island developing state, Dr. Cassandra?
Well, sea levels, as we've heard, accelerated climate change is accelerating sea level rise. And according to the latest estimates, by the year 2100, we're looking at a range of between 0.3 and 1.01 meters of sea level rise by that time. And while this is a global issue, particularly for small island developing states such as Trinidad and Tobago, the impacts of this sea level rise can be more catastrophic for us, with most of our population located at the coastal zone and our deriving economic gain from our coastal resources. Sea level rise can have a significant impact on that.
So we need to do the very best that we can there's little we can do about the sea level rise itself, but the impact on our coastlines, particularly our coastline communities, we've got to put in measures to protect ourselves from that continued battering and damage as the sea levels continue to increase and that sort of thing, don't we?
Well, so that is one response to sea level rise, to coastal armoring, building of breakwaters to protect the coastlines from erosion, which is one of the impacts of sea level rise. But I would say that studying the ocean and understanding what the current rates of sea level rise are, and then being able to predict what potential future rates will be, is potentially more important. So that we can be able to better mitigate and determine whether we need these hard structures, which in some cases we may, or whether we need to have setbacks or planned retreats or more nature-based solutions. So these are all things that we can do. The Paris Agreement says that we are trying to basically reduce the temperature, which should then reduce sea levels. But in the event that we are not able to get to those goals, there are other things that we can do. And one of the things is to put resources into collecting data and understanding the physical, biological, and chemical characteristics of the ocean.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring Hamish into the discussion right now because Hamish is involved in a project, a LiDAR project, which basically is going to get a sense as to where we are at this point in time, know how much work we have to do going forward, particularly when it comes to reducing our carbon footprint, which is impacting that temperature rise, precipitating climate change. Isn't it, Hamish?
Yes. So in 2014, the government of Trinidad and Tobago conducted a LiDAR survey. LiDAR stands for Light Detection and Ranging. This is basically a laser that's mounted in a plane and shoots out hundreds of thousands of times per second. So it characterizes everything: the ground surface, the tops of trees, the tops of buildings. So the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, the Service and Mapping Division, is the data custodian of this, and they generously made it available to the IMA. So from that, we were able to create a number of different products, including a digital elevation model. This has been used by a number of different agencies, by WASA, Drainage Division for defining watersheds and flood risk mitigation, and other applications. But what we actually used it for was to determine the total amount of carbon. So basically, when this laser flies against the tops of the trees, so we have been able to create a model that has the height of every single tree in Trinidad and Tobago. Using that information, we can very accurately and to the highest level of accuracy assess the total amount of carbon held in our above-ground forests of Trinidad and Tobago. And so we've been able to do that for all trees, but the IMA has been focusing more upon the mangrove forest carbon. And there's a recent publication by the Institute of Marine Affairs that helps illustrate that how much our mangrove forests are being lost, as well as there's been a number of collaborative projects being undertaken with Professor Agard at the University of the West Indies St. Augustine Centre for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, as well as funding from the British High Commission in the UK. We've been able to get ground-based LiDAR to pair with the aerial-based LiDAR to improve our estimates of carbon totals.
Just as a matter of interest, Hamish, is there a connection between the rising sea levels and the loss of our mangroves, or is it because of human activity again destroying our mangroves, just as we've been destroying our internal forests?
Yes, sea levels is playing a major role in a significant role in the loss of mangroves. So there are mangroves being lost because of human activity, cutting down of mangroves, infilling of mangroves. Sometimes you see when people have debris and refuse from buildings, demolishing buildings, they go and they dump it in the mangrove and backfilling in order to gain more land. So we are losing mangroves because of human activity, but also sea level rise has been responsible for the loss of mangroves, particularly in the Caroni Swamp. In the central area of the Caroni Swamp, the mangroves are retreating at, in the last 20 years, they've retreated about 40 meters in certain locations. So that the land is actually retreated from there. And if you're familiar with the geography of that area, the mangrove swamp basically is extended right up to the Uriah Butler Highway at this point. So it's not been really permitted to shift landward. So we are basically losing mangrove swamp extent in certain locations because of sea level rise.
So we need the mangroves to protect us from damaging storms and also to help as part of the mitigation for sea level rise. But we're destroying them faster than they can actually do that job. And we're destroying our forests, which are essentially our lungs, ensuring that we have clean, healthy air. Do we really understand just how much damage we've been doing, Hamish?
Yes, we have been able to quantify the total amount of mangroves lost extent. The IMA doesn't really have primary responsibility for forest. That's more the forestry division.
I understand that.
Yeah, but we have been making some assessments, and there has been work done to demonstrate the loss of forest extent in the last few decades.
I want to bring back Dr. Cassandra now, our oceanographer. As we see these changes happening in the oceans, that's also going to be having an impact on those who rely on the oceans for their livelihoods, isn't it? It's going to impact their ability to function economically, to actually live, okay lives.
Absolutely. And the coastal communities of low elevation coastal zones are the ones that will feel the impact first, and they will feel it the hardest. And there are communities in Trinidad and Tobago that are already experiencing accelerated coastal erosion. Actually, a recent study that the IMA completed looking at shoreline change across Trinidad and Tobago from the period 1994 to 2014, on all coasts of Trinidad and Tobago, we are seeing erosion, with net erosion on all but one coast. So these coastal communities, they're being inundated more often and to higher levels. So not only where people live, but yes, where they gain their livelihoods. These are all significant impacts, particularly for small island developing states.
I think it was, if not last year, the year before, we saw that dramatic situation happening in Cedrus, with a major challenge to one of the communities there on the coastline. Terrible erosion, people had to abandon their homes. Wasn't that a glaring example? Wasn't that supposed to be a wake-up call for us here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, accelerated climate change, so sea level rise. We also have storms that are now of higher intensity. So waves are coming in with higher energy and impacting our shorelines, which are supposed to be protecting our inlands. So those are the areas that are going to get this high energy impact, and we're going to see effects there. So one of the things that we should be considering is really monitoring and putting policies into place about coastal development and where we allow houses and development to take place to prevent things like this from happening, with the understanding that these changes are going to happen. So things like planned retreat for areas where there's already development, or the prevention of development in certain areas with, like, say, setbacks. So no construction is allowed within this coastal zone area. Those are things that we can do to put into place. But yes, the impacts are glaring, and they're already affecting us and globally as well. But as I said, the Caribbean region and Trinidad and Tobago, we will be facing higher impacts.
You've been doing these studies to monitor just how much things have changed for us. That data collected will inform policy. What specific policy will be coming out or has come out already that we may have heard of but not realize exactly why that policy was put in place, that you can name for us?
I can't name policy, but I can say that, for example, Hamish mentioned the LIDAR DEM that was created, that is used by ministries to then inform policy. Oh. So when we have rates of sea level rise, anyone that's doing construction in the coastal zone can then say, based on this level of sea level rise, or this level of predicted sea level rise, this is how we will do the construction, and this is how we will allow development in the coastal zone. So while we necessarily develop policy to inform it, and one of the things that the IMA is we're currently to develop guidelines for setback determination. So we at the IMA are responsible for guiding the Ministry of Planning on coastal development, say whether it's feasible or not. And this is one of the things that we are looking at.
All right, Dr. Cassandra Nanlal. And
sorry, the Institute of
Hi, Hamish. Yes.
Sorry, just mentioned that the Institute of Marine Affairs is leading the Integrated Coastal Zone Management. That is a multi-sectoral interagency policy development to better guide development in the coastal zone.
Okay. All right, Hamish, Asmath, and Dr. Cassandra Nanlal, thanks to both of you for joining us on the show this morning, and happy Mother Earth Day to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Bye.